You're live, sir.
All right. So welcome to, if anybody is listening, to the EMS committee, June 16th meeting. We will do a roll call. All the members whose attendance. We'll start with you,
Diane Kataya.
Matt.
Matt D'Esposito.
Glenn Torrey.
Data Chalandi.
Gloria Olson.
We also have some guests here from NIMS, Newington Emergency Medical Services,
Scott Mangan.
and from AMR.
Brandon Bartel.
And we have no public participation as of yet? Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting. Laura, did we ever?
I wasn't at the last meeting,
Okay.
so I don't know what you did.
So we'll hold that off. Any old business 4.0?
I know we had that special meeting and there was talk of the CAD system. Is there any movement on that? CAD system, CAD link, anything?
Yeah, there's, I talked to Brandon a couple of days ago, and there is some movement. We can get to that now. I think I have that down for 7.0, but if you wanna, I know you have some updates.
Okay. Yeah, so the AMR is moving to a new CAD called Logis that's projected to be completed by Q4 of this year. And as part of that rollout, that includes the functional CAD to CAD link between the Newington Police Department's CAD and AMR. That was originally slated to be completed by June of this year, but it was pushed back due to delays getting technology. They're updating some computer infrastructure in the New Haven Center. So as far as the CAD link is concerned, that'll all be included with the new CAD rollout, which is slated to be done Q4 of this year.
And you have everything you need with Newington side. You said they're ready to go.
Yep, so the implementation team will actually be here next week, so I'll be meeting with them in New Haven to just confirm that they're all set with Newington and the other towns that we have CAD links with. But I did see some email communication go out from our implementation team from the AMR side to some contacts over at Newington dispatch. I'm not sure if they were IT or if it was more of a leadership, but there's been some communication back and forth. I've also had some conversations with Russell about the current CAD link, if that's possible. As of right now, it looks like it'll be with the new CAD is when the CAD link will be able to be implemented.
Okay. And at some point, Newington will be implemented into that at some point, or do we?
The Newington CAD link?
Yeah, the Newington ambulance.
So I don't know anything about the Newington. I can't speak to Newington ambulance because we AMR's CAD link.
We had a meeting a few weeks ago regarding that. Maybe schedule another meeting in a few weeks, see where we're at.
Yeah.
Give it time to get stuff done. All right. Any other questions, Glenn?
No, that's not on that issue, no.
Okay. Any other old business? All right, moving on to 5.0 reports. Reports from Newington EMS and from AMR. Scott, I did not receive any reports from Newington. I assume it's the same.
Yeah, I think
thing.
the big hurdle that we've had over the years, and with the changes that Brandon's team is bringing, I think once the Newington side, IT side, gets running, then data will be more transparent. Right now, the data is just not transparent at all. So they can't give us data files.
But you know, there was a call, you're not getting down into specific categories of calls and times.
No. Yeah, we get basically once a week, we get about a 90-page PDF document from the police department. That's what they consider their report.
And then that probably just lists addresses and.
Yeah, it has all the data, but we can't take that data and do anything with it.
Convert it.
Yeah.
So the trick has always been that there was no link into next gen that could be safely distributed out. So the link that's being set up for the CAD to CAD opens up all that infrastructure that Paul Buta needs to have, I think, in place, whereas to have them implement it for us was never on their agenda. So I think once that gets done, now the IT can't say it can't be done. Right now, it's easy for them to say it can't be done because you're not a public service agency. So once IT has proven they can do it, then the excuses will be gone.
So they've gone through their sea trials, so they have an excuse now. They can take on water.
We'll see.
So I'll maybe try to talk to the town manager and Sergeant Clark and others, maybe September schedule a meeting.
Clerk?
Chief Clark.
Chief Clark.
Yes, my pardon, Chief Clark. Hope you don't watch him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a meeting in September, that should give us some time to see what we have going. Have a special meeting in September. 5.2 American Medical Response Times. Everybody should have gotten a copy of the new the new times. Anything out of the ordinary? Okay. I didn't see anything that kind of stuck out. 6.0 communications. Brendan, I know it's only been a couple of days. Any updates on those two issues that?
Yeah, so the two issues that Dan's talking about was with the, I guess, some challenges getting a call transferred over to the AMR Comm Center. I've spoken with Russell. I guess he's off. He comes back to work on Saturday. What we have done preliminarily is we've looked in our system to see if we could identify when those calls came in, if the call went into an overload status, which would mean like if everyone's on the phone and that line was ringing. We actually don't see any record of that transfer entering our comm center, which means it could be a couple of issues, either an issue with the ring down line circuits themselves or the actual numbers. So our IT department has been engaged. They have not seen any issues internally with AMR's phone system. So we have escalated that to Frontier as a priority ticket to look at that ring down circuit. So just so that the group understands, there's 3 phone numbers that we receive 911 calls on. So there are 2 numbers that we call them 911 lines. Those are the phone calls that are transferred when the caller is on the phone directly to the AMR center. And then there's another number that's used when it's just a dispatcher wanting to speak to another dispatcher. I provided with Russell with all 3 of those numbers. He has not been able to verify what's programmed in. He did mention to me that he believes that 1 or 2 of the ring down lines may be incorrect just from his memory, but he doesn't know. So we're just waiting on confirmation to make sure that those numbers are happening, are programmed correctly. And then we do have the Frontier ticket currently open. So we could get to the bottom of this and ensure that there's no other issues going forward. During the time frame where those delays or inability to get these calls for the AMR came in, there were other calls going on around that time frame in Newington. So we do know that phone calls were being made and that we were being notified of calls, but we do not see in our computer system those specific calls actually coming in. So we're trying to get to the bottom of that, and it may just be as simple as a phone number issue if the incorrect numbers are programmed into the dialer.
Incorrect 7-digit.
Yeah. So there's 2 7-digit numbers for the ring down lines or for the 911 lines, and then the second one or third one for just the regular communication. I did provide Russell. Actually, it was around this time last year with a 4th number to use, which was not connected to the same phone system for like a redundancy or backup. And I'm just confirming if that has been used or if that's there as an option. So hopefully we'll have some more answers from him when he returns back to work. I think he's back in on Saturday, and he was going to give me a call then.
Because another service that you guys shared the city with had the same problem with one of the ring down lines. They implemented it was a cheap and it doesn't cover like recording, but they put a cell phone, an HPD dispatch, and then cell phone into dispatch, and that's like the fail safe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so there's no
Yeah.
fail safe like.
Well, so the other, there is a backup number that I previously provided. That doesn't go through the normal same phone system as the.
It could anywhere's up in the fishbowl.
So I just don't know if that number has been used or if that was in those 2 or 3 instances where they had an issue. I'm not sure yet if they've tried that backup number or not. So Russell's going to provide me some feedback on that, and hopefully we can get it straightened out. We have not had any issues in any of the other municipalities where our ring down lines have been operating, or with the CAD link. So I know this is it's really isolated to Newington, and we just want to see what we could determine if it's truly an IT issue. A couple of years ago when there was a concern, we had some examples of calls that came in when all of the 911 operators were on the phone, and that kind of contributed to the delay in answering. However, in this case, our data shows that we had agents available to pick up the phone. So it wasn't like there was no one to answer the phone. It's just the call never came through. So that's what we're trying to determine where that breakdown is.
So it's the same incident. I know it happened, like you said, a couple of years ago, where you said that your dispatch never received a phone call. So same issue then. Okay.
Yeah, and so when that happened, both sides of the ring down line were checked, both Newington side and AMR side, and they found no issue, and then there was no further issue after that. So,
Okay. So I guess we need to find out from Russ when he gets back what plans are in place for backup numbers to get a hold of you guys, because a couple of one of those calls in particular was kind of a critical call.
Mhm. And I would just ask too that when these do happen in real time, if someone could either get a hold of me immediately or speak to a supervisor so that we could try to get on top of it immediately with inside the communication center, especially if it's anything to do with a phone line. We could usually get a pretty immediate response from the phone company if we get on it immediately if there's an issue.
Well, they all seem to call Scott. So, okay. Oh yeah, just let me know when something comes up with that. Any other questions for Brendan in the matter? Right. I guess we also need to find out from Newington Police, is there any kind of backup for in case we can't, for whatever reason, reach you guys? Is there a backup plan or not, as far as calling another service or mutual aid or whatever the case may be?
We had a call, was it Saturday? It was weird. The fire department was at a van fire. There was clients from a mental health facility, and their doctor wanted those clients seen after they were refused initially on scene, and the fire department cleared. And then they whacked the town with a request for 4 ambulances. And Newington's primary was out. I think AMR was already on a call, and they were requested 4 more ambulances to transport these clients. The question is, AMR came back, said they didn't have any units available. How would that go about initiating mutual aid? Because at the time it was after 6 p.m. So the surrounding towns, Weathersfield, Rocky Hill, New Britain, if they weren't busy, may have had units available. It wasn't a critical call, but in a situation where there might have been a critical call and needed that many ambulances, to me, and it's just from my life experience, is if you're calling a service and they say they're not available, and they'll call you back when they're available, you should default to your next line of calls and get them sent. If the service that they called originally says, hey, we got those units now, okay, but at least you got something going. It alleviates. There was not a significant delay. It was a flow of traffic, so it wasn't quite that much of an emergency, but there was a delay. So if something bad happened, not that we have any patients at the VA fire, but if it ever caught on fire again, I don't think they're waiting to say, hey, we got units available. And that's just an everyday call.
That call came through as an eval. So
Initially, yeah.
from a previous incident in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it kind of got downgraded.
Surprise, yeah.
It wasn't, you know.
Well, initially there was an AMR unit and they actually got refusals.
Right.
Oh, yeah, they
Yes.
all refused at the scene and then they got them back
So is
to
that more of an
Newington.
inter-facility transfer?
It was
Versus an
because it,
emergency.
And they didn't even say they wanted to transport. They just said, we want an eval again on the 4 people that were involved in the,
actually, the exact wording was per their medical control.
Then their medical control.
They wanted- they wanted-
Facility transfers.
They wanted ambulances. I mean, the problem is they're wards of the state, so, there's legal issues involved with that.
So
I
it's
didn't
a piece of
understand.
plastic.
So the question is, what happens when there's no ambulances available? Was that the
Like if
question?
you guys, if the city is, Dave Matthews has a concert and every one of your trucks is out there because there's another riot. And we call and we need like 3 ambulances.
So
Where's the backup?
Yeah, so we have mutual aid agreements with Aetna, ASM, and New Britain. I mean, I guess it could be challenging if it's during NEMS's time for service, and I'm sure you guys have mutual aid agreements as well. But very rarely do we have to call mutual aid, but when we do, we brought in New Britain, and we've brought in Aetna and ASM as
Okay,
needed.
just at the time,
Yeah.
the region.
Yeah.
You know, you guys may have been busy, but the towns around us were actually had resources. You know, it just comes from my background of, I worked at a regional center where you guys would get a call if your 26th didn't sign, if the 26th didn't sign on in a certain amount of time, sorry, we're going to the next unit. So it's just, that's how mine works is.
Yeah, so I guess for the daytime hours when AMR is providing ambulance service, then that we utilize that mutual aid matrix. So we start with New Britain and then ASM, or I'm sorry, Aetna, ASM. We can, and we also have agreements with Yukon Health Center in Farmington. As far as after hours, I mean, I would have to look how often we don't have an ambulance to provide backup support for you. But if needed, we could also make those same phone calls through that same mutual aid kind of plan. I do not have agreements with Rocky Hill or Weathersfield, but you might have agreements with them.
Right, and
So-
they're down on the list, I think like 5 or 6.
So,
Yeah.
but does NPD dispatch have a list?
Yes.
So if they were told at dispatch center, no units available, would they think to automatically default to the?
Probably not, 'cause I don't think they have policies.
Okay. That's maybe something they should look at, because, yep, this, again, low-level call, but if something bad were to happen, the delay could be, you know, that something puts you on the news and you want to avoid that.
I'll make a note of it. See what we can do about that, or at least get some information on if there is. Because during the daytime, I believe, AMR has backup plans in place for, per the contract.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I could tell you that the amount of responses in request for service in Newington that we would have to pass to a mutual aid provider is extremely low. I think year to date, there might be 1 or 2 occurrences.
I know of 2, there was a real busy night and they tried to reach back. It was just about 5. They tried to reach back and they were trying to pry Yukon out of their firehouse to go to the Outback. That was earlier in the year. That was just an unusual one because it's like Yukon.
We just had that cruiser transport too, where
Yeah, the bus
we were
garage.
at 15 minutes with no ambulance assigned and it never was passed to
Mhm.
backup from mutual aid.
Yeah, so that particular incident was a failure by the dispatcher in the communication center. So we did have ambulances available at the office and signing on for their shift. They just were not, no one was aware that there was a call holding in Newington. And there was about a 15-minute period of time that went by where that call was not dispatched. So during that investigation, we disciplined that individual dispatcher, provided remedial education, So we did have the physical ambulances in the units. There was no communication. So the call was received and then the local operations team was not made aware that there was a call holding in Newington. And
Because
that-
for the bus garage, literally, if it was 15 minutes, they could have shagged them out of New Britain General or Arch Street from New Britain EMS, even gotten their cardiac truck there. Because apparently, that had a unique outcome with that patient.
All right, anything else on 6.0? All right, 6.1, emergency medical dispatching. All right. So we kind of went over this a little bit. So what's coming into question is, and I know Chief Mangan, see, I got that right, Chief Mangan, sent me a couple of letters, and then I know he sent you something, Brandon. How does EMD work as far as night? Well, we'll start with night, when NIMS is on duty, as far as dispatching the paramedic. I remember this conversation from previous committee meetings and talking to Chris Chaplin. Is the medic responding to most of all calls?
No, so the way that it's supposed to work, and I've reaffirmed that again today, actually, is the call is transferred to AMR. AMR does the EMD. If the paramedic was dispatched prior to EMD being completed, and the call it then turns into a BLS call, they're supposed to cancel the paramedic and return them to service. If the paramedic arrives on scene prior to EMD being completed, then he or she needs to obviously do their assessment.
Right.
But if the call is EMD'd out BLS, I think we agreed upon, priority 1 responses will always get a paramedic. Priority 2 BLS responses should not be receiving a paramedic. And Scott had sent me some examples, or we've spoken briefly that has happened, or they noticed that increase in some of the BLS responses. So I've asked for that to be re-educated, put out again, and ensure that there's follow-up from the communication supervisors that the fly car quick response vehicle is not dispatched until EMD is complete, or if they are dispatched prior to EMD being completed, that they go back and cancel that unit before they, with the change in determinant from ALS to BLS.
Yeah, there are instances that I saw paramedic goes emergency lights and sirens, BLS using doesn't, or vice versa.
And also there's times you can hear where both units are going due to the way the call was put out. The EMD most likely wasn't complete, and then medic 3 comes up going, this is a non-priority response per EMD. Granted, I believe in that case the medic still kept going, but they had downgraded it to the like a alpha level. Again, it's the system. It's not perfect.
Yeah, and I think the CAD link will also help with some of that. So is the issue that the BLS, that when NEMS is responding, they're not given the information to downgrade to a non-emergency response? Or is the issue that the paramedic is going on BLS calls, or is it both?
Oh, about 90% of the time for NEMS, if you were to monitor the radio, they don't get any updates. They get 0. I mean, wind. That's about it. If the medic is, depending who the medic is, or what the medic says, that's how they get some of the updates. Occasionally they'll get downgraded, like the officer gets on scene and says, no, this is not what it was, so you can put them on a lower priority.
Yeah, so anytime there's a change in response, if we know that Newington disconnects from the line, sometimes they don't always know that. I believe there's 2 things that can happen, and I'm not a dispatcher, this is related to me, but sometimes there's a handoff and Newington disconnects from the call, and then AMR continues with the call and does their EMD. And in those cases, they should be calling back to Newington to provide them with updates. And then the other option, which I'm told does happen from time to time, is the Newington dispatcher, I guess when they have time, will remain on that line, and then they're getting the same updates as the EMD is happening. I mean, Matt, if you know, specifically.
Majority of our dispatchers are going to do the handoff.
Handoff and just hang
disconnect
up.
Because
Okay. You have other stuff to
we
do.
don't have dedicated call takers. We have 2 dispatchers covering everything. So they usually have to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, there's probably some dispatchers who, when there is downtime, especially on like midnights, they might be curious and just continue to stay on the line. But the general procedure is a handoff and make themselves available for something else.
Okay. And I will circle back to make sure that those, and when I talk to Russell next week, I'll make sure that we circle back on that about the phone calls, what information they're getting back and how often that's happening.
Some of this was the push for the CAD link.
The CAD link. Yep, for sure. And that will really help with a lot of that because I know in the centers that have limited staff or not, they don't have dedicated call takers, being able to just pull that call window up and seeing that information go back and forth is a lot smoother, especially for units that have the MDTs. So in the police cruisers, they should be getting the same notes. And I'm not sure if you guys have MDTs or not, but yes. So the CAD link is a priority and we are going to do it. You know, I'm happy to see that there's now that there's been buy-in to make this happen. I think we've been talking about the CAD link for a while in these meetings from what I can remember to get that in place. So CAD link is still on the table and it's going to happen. It's just, we're looking at the LOGIS. It's all going to be considered one big rollout for us.
Just out of curiosity, and you most likely may not know this, which EMD system is AMR New Haven using?
Yeah, so we use ProQA.
ProQA?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so we have pretty progressive.
That includes the QA/QI.
Yep. So it's an accredited center. We have a QA department that reviews, those calls and the percentages to maintain our accreditation. We could have any specific EMD reviewed, and we have a QA department that could do that. So if there's ever a concern about a specific call and what determinant was made, they do a review. Last year, I believe we just obtained our reaccreditation for the center. And yes, they do the ProQA. And so all of those protocols and response determinants are approved by New Haven sponsor hospitals medical direction. And they do meet pretty frequently with them. And they can make some adjustments as needed, like we did with the COVID protocol, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they've added, like, it used to be 30, now it's 36 protocols in ProQA. 2 of them are different COVID response. So, okay. That was just more of a curiosity in my part.
So regardless of daytime, nighttime, our Newington's dispatchers should be, all medical calls should be routed to EMD regardless of whether it's the local drunk or cardiac arrest or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, when it's possible. I know there's times where they can't send calls over, like if they don't, Russell has explained to me that if they get a call on a 7-digit number versus a 911 line, that those can't be transferred for EMD.
Right.
Obviously, if police officer or another fire resource calls in, those obviously can't be EMD, but the majority of the calls should be.
A lot of them, what doesn't seem like EMDs tends to, and it's the nature of a motor vehicle accident. Those folks tend not to want to stay on the line.
Yeah.
And you have the calls where the caller is not with the patient.
Yeah, the third parties, those happen often.
Scott, did you have anything?
No, I think Brandon's pretty much covered it.
Excellent. 7.0 new business, we kind of already went over this under old business as well, so anything new anybody would like to add about the CAT system? Like I said, hopefully we'll have a meeting and we'll take the rest of the summer off, have a meeting in September maybe. Try to get everybody together. 7.2, we talked about the responses for the bus garage and so on and so forth. 8.0 information sharing. Anybody have anything they'd like to add?
Just that we're approaching that time of every few years where the contract's coming up.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Sometimes easier to start working on that sooner than later.
Yeah, so everybody in the committee should have gotten a copy of a couple of the contracts. So there's, let's see if I can get this from the top of my head. the AMR, Town of Newington contract during the daytime hours. The EMD contract, there is a separate contract with AMR and NIMS, as well as NIMS in the Town of Newington. Did I get it all right?
I think those five.
Yeah. So there's a lot to review, and plus we have the local emergency planning plan that we have to submit by next year to the state Department of Public Health, which I believe I sent you guys a copy of. I'm not sure. I know I sent that at some point. I'm gonna try to get a hold of Megan. And she just said she started working on it, but I haven't heard from her in a while. We might need a special meeting at some point to discuss those contracts and changes we want to make to them. This would be the time to do it. The contracts are up next July. So if we want to make any changes, we want to submit to the town, you have to start sooner more than later, because we have to revise drafts, et cetera, and so forth. It's a lengthy process.
And then sometimes start all over.
And sometimes start all over, absolutely. Any other information sharing? 9.0 public participation? Nobody? All right. Motion to adjourn then.
I second it.
You second?
I second.
You got the hammer.
I got the, oh, that's right, I got the hammer. We're adjourned. This will be Doc.